Hey sis, what's up? I hope you're doing well and having a great day. Today you're in for a real treat. I had the pleasure of sitting down with the amazing Rita Carter, a vessel for the kingdom of God, a certified life and leadership coach, author, speaker, and founder and CEO of Breakthrough. Rita is so passionate about guiding women to break through what's holding them back, unlock their full potential, and create fulfilling and harmonious relationships. She teaches all about breaking through those barriers of unhealthy relationships so that individuals can have fulfilling connections. On this episode today, Rita is going to be sharing her journey of overcoming relationship challenges and how you too can start to build healthy relationships with God, yourself, and others. Stay tuned to learn practical steps you can take to build healthy relationships and how to release the unhealthy relationships that no longer serve you or that you want in your life. Let's go. Ready to build your kingdom business and make an impact? Are you overwhelmed with too many business ideas? Or do you find yourself supporting other people's dreams but neglecting your own? Hey, I'm Donna Cherie, a certified kingdom coach, author, and speaker. Welcome to Call for Business. I know what it's like to feel lost, stuck, and bogged down with information overload, but I discovered the power of taking one step at a time and doing business God's way. Inside this podcast, I'll teach you how to get your coaching business up and running, establish your business basics, develop a kingdom mindset, craft your first book blueprint, all while keeping God at the center of your business. It's time to get clear, sis. Move with purpose and unlock your full potential. Grab a notebook and pen with your favorite cup of tea. I pray this blesses you. Let's get it. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to my girl, Callie Brett, for this 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. She said, I love listening to this podcast while I work. The guests are always interesting, and Donna is so relatable and real. I highly recommend for all Christian leaders and business owners. Thanks, Callie Brett, for listening to the show. Love you so much. And if you want to leave a review, you can head on over to Apple Podcasts, scroll down to the little pencil with the square and where it says write a review, and I'll read it on the show. Thanks. Hey, Rita, welcome to the show.
Hey there. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thank you again for having me. I am a certified relationship, life, and leadership development coach. I'm also the founder and CEO of Breakthrough. I focus on helping individuals break through the barriers that's holding them back, rather if it's personal or professional. We all have barriers. Sometimes we create our own barriers, but I help people to identify those barriers and work through them one on one or in group sessions to break those barriers so they can become their authentic selves, walk in their purpose, and create fulfilling relationships along the way. I've been on this journey. It actually started on the relationship perspective because I was battling with relationships within my life, but it has blossomed. I've also been in corporate America for over 2 decades. And so, what I'm realizing as I continue to evolve is that every aspect of my life is relational. And so a lot of times we compartmentalize our lives, right? This is home, this is work, this is, we separate everything. But what I'm realizing is that um, relationships is in every facet. It's how you view relationships. It's how you build relationships. It's how you obtain relationships and your view and your perspective of them. So I am now blending everything together because when I speak from a leadership perspective, it really starts with relationships. You can manage metrics all you want to. You can manage performance and FTE and your budget. But if you don't build relationships, your company is not going to be successful. If you don't know how to build healthy relationships, your marriage is not going to be successful. Your friendships are not going to be successful. So I try to blend it all in because I think the root is relationships. So that's a little bit about me. I do a lot of facilitations and trainings. I also do one-on-ones as well as group coaching as well.
Awesome. So you stay busy
Yeah.
helping people in various areas and still tying it back to that core of relationships.
Yes.
And I myself, as I guess as I get older and mature, I realize the power of having like healthy relationships.
Hmm.
Because I think sometimes, like when we're in our youth or just growing up, we don't really understand the power of healthy relationships.
Hmm.
And like you said, it's so vital in all facets and areas of our life.
Hmm.
So, tell us, how did you develop this passion for helping others create healthy relationships, personally and professionally?
Sure. I think, as I mentioned to you before, my journey started on the relationship side. Really, if you look back, it really started on the couch in therapy when I was trying to save my marriage many years ago. And so I've been married for a little over 18 years. But early on in our marriage, we struggled. Every marriage has their bumps and bruises. And so we made the decision to go to counseling. And when I sat on that couch, I think I went in thinking it was him, him, him. Fix him, Lord, fix him. He did this, he did that. But in all honesty, I had a lot of wounds from my father. And so a lot of things that I brought up during the counseling sessions really had nothing to do with my husband. It really, you have to really get to the root of it. So it really started from really having an absent father, even though he was present in the home. And so he was emotionally unavailable. And I think that started um, the fragments that I dealt with throughout life when it dealt with broken relationships. I like to call myself a recovering people pleaser because I used to always seek to please everybody. I felt that if everybody was pleased and happy, then I was good. And that's obviously not the case now that I know better. But I think it started with my father. I was seeking to please him, and it seemed like nothing ever worked. And it seemed like I wasn't seen. Um, and so that relationship with my father created bad decision making in relationships as I grew up, right? In relationships and thinking love was one way and it actually wasn't. Friendships, there was a lack of reciprocity. I was pouring, 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 but really wasn't giving anything in return. And so it kind of followed me. And sitting on that couch, thinking I was getting ready to save my marriage, but in reality, I was saving me. And so that's how my journey started. So before I can work on my marriage, I really had to dig deep and work on healing me and getting me to be whole and filled and healed from all of the bad decisions that I made that I took blame for or didn't take accountability for, forgiving loved ones that I didn't forgive who had harmed me or hurt me in some kind of way. And so it's been a journey along the way over these years. And so as I continue to heal and grow and mend my marriage, and we are in a good place, and children, and trying to be an example for my girls, I also realize in the professional space, it's all relational. Um, Going up that corporate ladder, it's really about relationships. It's not always your credentials, to be quite candid with you. It's about who you know. It's about how people view you. What I try to tell people, it's not your title. You can have so many titles, but if you don't know how to lead, they're not going to view you as a leader. And so you have to be able to build those relationships, create safe spaces, and then help people to grow because a leader is not about you, the leader, it's about the people that you're leading. And so, again, relationships. And I didn't really tie the two together until I started digging into my own career path. I'm like, oh my goodness, this leads back to relationships. And so that's where it started. It really started on the personal level, trying to get my marriage back into place, digging
Mhm.
deep, going back to my childhood, and now I'm bringing it all back together.
So good.
Yeah.
And why why does, not for so say for instance, if somebody, they're not there yet, like
Hmm.
they're still in this place of unhealthy relationships, whether it's with like a peer or on their job or what have you, like how
Hmm.
can they get out of this place to have this desire to be
Hmm.
able to begin having healthy relationships? Or
Hmm.
even just with like within themselves, having
Yeah.
that healthy relationship with themselves. How can they do that?
So I know for me, and this is what I tell some of my clients, is really I did a process of elimination in my own personal life. I knew what I didn't want. So I grew up not seeing a healthy example of a marriage. I grew up with seeing infidelity, seeing arguments about finances, seeing just bumping of the heads and not knowing how to effectively communicate, right? And so when I got married, I knew what I didn't want, but I wasn't clear on what I wanted. I just knew what I didn't want. And so I was like, what I grew up with, I didn't want that. And so it was important for me to really identify as I go through this journey, who am I? What are my strengths? What are my areas of opportunities? I think part of growth is taking accountability because we all have areas of opportunities. We can't do it all. We don't know it all. So from a professional standpoint, I like to play on each other's strengths, right? Because again, we don't know it all. So, team building exercises. So, if you know that you can take lead, you can take charge, you are an effective communicator, but you lack detail, well, you may not be the note taker for the team, right? For example. So, really sitting back and observing who you are first, being self aware enough to say, this is where I'm at. This is who I am. These are the areas I need to work on to be a better version of myself. And this is how I can be most effective in this kind of setting. And so that way you can play off the other strengths. Like I said, detail. If you lack detail, you're not a note taker. But if you are an effective communicator, you are very outgoing, you're an extrovert, you are very dominant, right? You don't mind going out in front of a crowd and closing deals and selling. you know you have to know who you are, and it takes a little bit to get there, but you have to be willing to take the good with the bad. And so what I would tell people is that if you don't know how to get out of that unhealthy relationship, you really need to step back and get someone just said today, you're trying to view the picture while you're in the frame. Right. That kind of sticks a little bit, right? Because you can't view the picture, but you're in it. So you have to kind of step out of it to really figure out, am I happy where I'm at? Am I happy in this career? Am I happy in this marriage? Am I happy in this friendship? I had to be willing to grieve, and I'm not talking about death of someone taking their last breath. I'm talking about grieving what was, or what could have been, or what should have been in your mind. And what that looks like is sometimes as you grow and evolve, um, you assume that your circle will stay the same. You're still going to have those same friends, childhood or college, roommates or whatever the case may be. But as you evolve and God grows you and shifts and pivots you in different areas, sometimes those relationships don't go with you. And sometimes those relationships shift. And so you need to be able to identify that I'm no longer in that space, right? And grieve that relationship that's no longer. It doesn't mean that you're mad or is bitter or angry or resentment or any of those negative emotions, but I'm no longer there. Right. And so once you start to grieve those relationships and say, this is not the path that I want to take. this is where God is leading me, and I need to part ways. And I'm still going to pray for you. We still cordial. We still pray for one another and look out for, but it's not the same. And sometimes that hurts a little bit. And sometimes when you are removing yourself from those uncomfortable situations, sometimes it could be uncomfortable. Case in point, your career. If you say, my environment at work is not healthy for me, my colleagues is just not a healthy way of working. I come home, I'm stressed, I have a headache, there's bickering in the lunchroom, whatever the case may be, you may have to make a decision because you probably can't be the best version of yourself and who God has called for you to be in that environment. So you probably have to step back and identify what I need to change, what I need to do differently, right? And it's not going to be comfortable. So a lot of times growth happens in the discomfort. So I would say grieving what was or what you thought would have been, and then also being willing to be uncomfortable as you grow. So if you think about it, putting on a pair of shoes and you no longer wear that size and you still trying to put it on, like it's uncomfortable. You have to grow. And so growth takes observation. It takes self-awareness. It takes grieving, like I said, what was, and then being prepared for what's to come. So, we talked a little bit about it, but the fear kind of
Mhm.
coming into play, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I would say that's where it kind of starts. And I know that every step may not be identical if you're looking from a personal lens versus a professional lens, but it really all kind of takes you to that end result.
Absolutely. And they can still go through those steps that you laid out, that
Hmm.
process, the process of elimination, the
Hmm.
observation to become
Hmm.
self aware.
Yes.
And I love what you said about that grieving process, what was or what you thought it should be. And
Hmm.
for those of you who are listening, you might be a writer or you like to journal. You could journal that process down to see what is it you're really thinking about, what it is that you want to change,
Hmm.
and then just do the work in everything. We have to do the work
Hmm.
so that we can reach our next step.
Hmm.
But Rita, as you mentioned, like this place of just discomfort and
Hmm.
even that the point of fear, how do we push past that to be able to get to the other side or the next step of the
Hmm.
process, if you will?
It, so I am actually dealing with that right now, to be candid with you. I am at a place in my life where God is shifting. And so if anyone knows me that's watching, um, I need to know everything. I must say, I do admit that I am kind of like a control freak. I want that blueprint. Like, I want God to lead, but I want him to lay it out for me so I can know. But we all know God doesn't give the blueprint, because if we had the blueprint, we'd be like, "Oh no, God, I don't want to make that left turn because I don't want to deal with that. Oh, that's going to hurt. So I don't want to do that." And so that's why he doesn't really lay everything out for us. But I just recently came from Woman Evolve conference. I go every year,
Oh, nice.
and the focus was surrender. And a lot of times we are ready to move forward and ready to say, God, take the wheel. And I know you're in the midst and I'm ready to pivot, but we don't surrender. We don't surrender to him and his will and his way. And I think that's the first step, is willing to, I wouldn't say ignore, because I'm a planner. I think it's important to plan. I think it's important to plan. However, you have to leave room to pivot, because you may plan, but God may say, "Oh, that's good, but I was actually going to take you here." Right. And you have to be willing to go there. And so I would say planning is key, knowing that you are not going to know everything, being willing to pivot, but also surrendering to his will. Um, everyone goes through the phase of life where they're praying for what they want. how they want school to work out, what job they want, what husband or wife they want, how they want their life to plan out. But I am in a season now where I want God's will because He knows what's best. And sometimes I'm not clear on what His will is. And so, because I'm not clear, I have to surrender. Because if I don't surrender, I'm going to want to take control. And God gives us choice.
Mhm.
He's a gentle God. He's not going to come down and slap you and be like, no, I said go left. He's not that kind of God. And so we need to make sure that we give Him room in our life. And I know that's easier said than done because what they say, life be lifing, right? You have kids, you have households, you have this, you have that, you have to do. But we have to give Him room and give Him space to grow so we can have that quiet time with Him. There's something that's in my hallway that says, make time for the quiet moments because that's when God whispers, that's when you can hear Him. He's not going to yell at you. So you have to make time, you have to create that space so you can get that clarity. So you can get that word, so you can be fed, and so you can hear Him say, this is the plan that I have for you. Because He will, even though He doesn't give us the blueprint, He does show us a glimpse.
Mhm.
If you continue to follow, if you are listening and obedient, He will show you a glimpse here and there. And so I would say surrendering, I would say creating a space for Him. um, it's important that you have that relationship with God. If you don't have that intimate relationship with Him, just to be quite honest, you're not going to have a healthy relationship with anybody else, and even yourself. Even yourself, you can't be 100% whole and healthy and complete and feeling confident and motivated that you can conquer anything. You can't have that feeling until you have that intimate relationship with Him because it's in Him that we get that confidence. It's in Him that we get that I can do all things through Christ, right? And so you have to have that intimate relationship with Him. And it starts with creating that space and surrendering and say, Lord, I don't know where you're taking me, but you have the wheel.
Mhm.
Wherever you go, I lead. I mean, I follow because you're leading, because you know what's best for me. And I'm saying this off of what I've experienced in my own relationship, not from what my mother prayed for, what my ancestors prayed for. I've experienced Him for myself. So, because I know Him for myself and I've created that space, I'm able to say, okay, God, you lead and I follow. And even though I'm not sure of where you're taking me, I trust you. I trust you. So it's trust, it's surrendering, it's being intentional about that relationship. So just like your friends or your spouse, your loved one, when you want to spend time and get to know somebody, you're being intentional. You want to go to brunch, you want to go to breakfast, let's go to dinner. You're being intentional about building that relationship. Back in the day, I don't know if they do it much today, but courting, right? The dating, they don't court that much anymore, right? That's because you're being intentional about where you're going with that relationship. Same thing. We have to be intentional with our relationship with God. And again, I know life happens, but we have to be, because that is the only way that we're going to start to shift and get away from the fear and get away from the discomfort is going to be there. Because as God grows you and moves you and pivots and shifts, there's going to be more discomfort because it's in the unknown. God is placing us in the unknown. So I would say, I know I said a lot, but it's surrender, it's being intentional, it's trusting Him, and then really seeking His face. So that way you know how to move and how to pivot. So that way you can feel confident to say, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm ready. I'm ready because I know who's leading me.
Amen. And so, from what I hear you saying, because I am a person who's very practical, so I'm like, well,
Hmm.
what is the step to do
Yep.
that? How
Hmm.
do I really do that?
Hmm.
So I just think about that declaration. It's a
Hmm.
declaration because you said
Hmm.
I trust you, and so you have to say that out of your mouth. Let that be your
Mhm.
prayer. And then also your posture and your
Mhm.
attitude.
Mhm.
Your attitude and your posture of what you're experiencing,
Mhm.
and pretty much humbling yourself, because to surrender, that is to humble, or to relinquish, to let go of having that control, and really just like letting God just really lead the way. So it's like,
Yeah.
to me, it's that posture and that attitude and that declaration that is practical, of what someone could do to get over toward that fear,
Yeah.
get over that fear.
Well, there you have it. Let's break down the barriers that prevent us from building healthy relationships, whether it's with God, ourselves, or others. It's imperative that we have healthy relationships in our lives. Be sure to tune in for part 2. That'll be dropping next week. That'll be episode 58 as we continue the conversation with Rita Carter. We'll dive deeper into what the word surrender means, how to surrender to God's plan, and overcome the grip of fear. You don't want to miss the practical wisdom and encouragement that Rita will be dropping with us. Until next time, ciao.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope today's episode inspired you to take that next step in building your kingdom business. Remember, small steps lead to big results. If this podcast has blessed you in some way, be sure to leave a written review on Apple Podcasts. Your support means the world to me, and it helps others to find the show. You can also pass on the inspiration by sharing this episode with a friend who could benefit from this message. God bless you, sis, and never, ever give up.